When 250 German soldiers and 6 tanks charged his position, 19-year-old Audie Murphy sent his men to safety, then climbed on top of a burning tank destroyer and held the line alone for an hour. Because this 5 feet 5 inches Texas farm boy would become the most decorated American soldier in history, earning every combat award possible, including the Medal of Honor. Welcome to Untold Heroes Stories. Which state are you watching from? We'd love to hear your military stories in the comments. The Medal of Honor stories told on this channel are completely true. Sources are in the description. Now, let's continue. Audie Leon Murphy was born on June 20th, 1925 in Kingston, Texas, to a family so poor they lived in a one-room sharecropper's shack. The fifth of 12 children, Audie learned early that life was about survival. His father abandoned the family when Audie was young, leaving him to help his mother raise his siblings by hunting rabbits and squirrels to put food on the table. By age 16, Audie's mother had died, and he was essentially raising his younger siblings alone. But when Pearl Harbor was attacked on December 7, 1941, something stirred in this small Texas boy. At 5 feet 5 inches tall and weighing barely 110 pounds, Audie Murphy decided he was going to serve his country. The problem was, he was only 16 years old. First, he tried to enlist in the Marines. They rejected him for being too short and too young. Then, he tried the Navy. Same result. The paratroopers wouldn't even look at him twice. Finally, in June 1942, Audie lied about his age and convinced an Army recruiter to let him enlist as an infantryman. Even then, his troubles weren't over. During basic training at Camp Walters, Texas, his drill sergeants didn't think much of the skinny farm boy who looked like he should still be in high school. They called him Baby, and some suggested he'd be better suited for kitchen duty than combat. But Audie Murphy had something that couldn't be taught, an unbreakable spirit and natural shooting ability that came from years of hunting to survive. During marksmanship training, while other recruits struggled to hit targets, Audie consistently scored expert marksman ratings. His instructors began to notice that this quiet Texas kid might have what it took after all. In February 1943, Private Audie Murphy shipped out to North Africa with Company B, 1st Battalion, 15th Infantry Regiment, 3rd Infantry Division. He was 17 years old and about to enter a war that would test every ounce of courage he possessed. His first taste of combat came during the Allied invasion of Sicily in July 1943. While many soldiers froze during their first firefight, Audie moved with calm precision, picking off enemy soldiers with the same steady hand he'd used to hunt game back in Texas. His company commander, Captain James Wills, immediately recognized that Murphy wasn't just another soldier. He was a natural-born warrior. But it was during the Italian campaign that Audie Murphy began building the legendary reputation that would make him famous. At Anzio, one of the bloodiest battles of the Italian front, Murphy's unit was pinned down by German machine gun fire. While his fellow soldiers took cover, Audie crawled forward under heavy fire to within 50 yards of the German position. Using his M1 Garand rifle, he methodically eliminated the machine gun crew with precise shots, allowing his company to advance. For this action, he earned his first Bronze Star medal. He was still just 18 years old. As the 3rd Infantry Division fought its way up the Italian peninsula, Audie Murphy's reputation grew. He had an uncanny ability to remain calm under fire and an almost supernatural accuracy with any weapon he picked up. His fellow soldiers began calling him Murphy's Law because whenever things went wrong, Murphy somehow made them right. During the Battle of Anzio, Murphy single-handedly attacked a German stronghold, killing 5 enemy soldiers and capturing 2 others. For this action, he was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, America's second-highest military decoration. He was promoted to Staff Sergeant at age 19, but Murphy's defining moment, the action that would earn him the Medal of Honor and cement his place in military history, came on January 26, 1945, near the small French village of Holzwihr. Company B had been fighting in the Colmar Pocket, a German-held territory in eastern France, for weeks. The weather was brutal. Temperatures well below freezing, with snow and ice making every movement treacherous. The men were exhausted, having been in almost continuous combat for months. On that fateful January morning, Murphy's company was dug in along a wooded area about a mile south of Holzwihr. Intelligence reports indicated that German forces were massing for a major counterattack, but nobody expected what was about to happen. At approximately 2 p.m., the German 1st Battalion, 12th SS Panzer Division, launched a massive assault on the American positions. What Murphy and his men saw emerging from the tree line was overwhelming. 250 German infantry soldiers, supported by 6 Panzer IV tanks and multiple self-propelled artillery pieces. The German attack was methodical and devastating. The Panzers led the assault, their 75mm guns systematically destroying American defensive positions. Behind them came waves of German infantry, their distinctive gray uniforms stark against the white snow as they advanced with military precision. Murphy's company was outnumbered more than 6-1. As the German tanks approached, Murphy realized his position was untenable. The shallow foxholes his men had dug provided little protection against tank fire, and the advancing infantry would soon overrun their position. "Fall back to the woods!" Murphy shouted to his men. "Regroup behind the tree line." Most of Company B began a fighting retreat toward better defensive positions 200 yards to the rear. But as his men pulled back, Murphy noticed something that changed everything. A disabled M36 tank destroyer, nicknamed Fury, sat abandoned about 50 yards forward of their original position. The M36 had been knocked out earlier in the fighting, and its crew had evacuated. But Murphy could see that its .50 caliber machine gun was still operational. More importantly, the tank destroyer's position offered the best field of fire against the advancing German forces. There was just one problem. The vehicle's fuel tank had been punctured by enemy fire, and diesel fuel was leaking underneath. It could catch fire at any moment. Most soldiers would have continued the retreat. Audie Murphy made a different choice. "Keep falling back," he yelled to his men. "I'll cover your withdrawal." Then, with German tanks closing to within 100 yards and enemy infantry advancing on 3 sides, 19-year-old Staff Sergeant Audie Murphy climbed on top of the burning tank destroyer. The .50 caliber M2 Browning machine gun was a devastating weapon, capable of firing 450 rounds per minute with an effective range of over 1,800 yards. In Murphy's hands, it became an instrument of precision destruction. As the German infantry advanced across the snow-covered field, Murphy opened fire. His first burst caught a squad of German soldiers completely in the open. The heavy .50 caliber rounds cut through their ranks like a scythe. The survivors dove for cover, but Murphy adjusted his fire, systematically eliminating anyone who tried to advance. The German tanks turned their attention to this lone American who had the audacity to challenge an entire battalion. The lead Panzer IV swiveled its turret toward Murphy's position and fired its 75mm main gun. The shell exploded just 20 yards from the tank destroyer, showering Murphy with dirt and shrapnel. The concussion was so powerful, it nearly knocked him off the vehicle. But when the smoke cleared, Murphy was still there, still firing. For the next hour, Audie Murphy fought a one-man war against impossible odds. The German commanders couldn't understand how a single soldier was holding up their entire advance. They sent wave after wave of infantry against Murphy's position, but each assault was cut down by withering machine gun fire. The .50 caliber rounds were so powerful they could penetrate light armor and concrete, making any cover the Germans found almost useless. German artillery began targeting Murphy's position directly. High-explosive shells rained down around the tank destroyer, some exploding so close that hot shrapnel peppered Murphy's uniform. The concussions were so severe they ruptured his eardrums, but he continued firing. Meanwhile, the diesel fuel leak under the tank destroyer had ignited. Flames began licking at the underside of the vehicle, and thick black smoke billowed around Murphy's position. The fuel tank could explode at any second, turning the M36 into a fireball. Murphy's own company commander, using a field telephone, called him directly. "Murphy, get off that thing! It's going to blow!" Murphy's response became legendary. "I'm staying here. These sons of bitches aren't getting past me." The German attack intensified. Mortar rounds began falling around Murphy's position with mathematical precision as German forward observers adjusted their fire. Machine gun bullets from advancing infantry rang off the tank destroyer's armor like deadly hail. But Murphy had found his rhythm. Years of hunting in the Texas woods had taught him to lead moving targets, and now he applied those skills to devastating effect. German soldiers advancing across the open field fell with mechanical precision as Murphy picked them off one by one. The psychological effect on the German forces was immense. Here was a single American soldier, standing atop a burning vehicle, calmly mowing down an entire battalion. Some German soldiers began to falter, unsure how to advance against such determined resistance. At one point, a German squad managed to get within 50 yards of Murphy's position by using a drainage ditch for cover. They thought they had flanked him and prepared to assault the tank destroyer from the side. Murphy saw them coming. Swiveling the .50 caliber machine gun, he fired a long burst into the ditch. The heavy rounds ricocheted off the concrete sides, creating a killing zone that eliminated the entire squad. No German soldiers got closer than 50 yards to Murphy's position for the remainder of the battle. As the hour wore on, Murphy's ammunition began running low. Each belt for the .50 caliber contained 110 rounds, and he had already gone through several, but he made every shot count, targeting German officers and machine gunners first to disrupt their command structure. The flames under the tank destroyer were growing higher. The heat was becoming unbearable, and Murphy's uniform was singed from the fire below. Smoke inhalation was making it difficult to breathe, but he refused to abandon his position. Then, at approximately 3 p.m., something remarkable happened. The German attack began to falter. The sustained casualties from Murphy's machine gun fire had taken their toll. Of the 250 German soldiers who had begun the assault, dozens lay dead or wounded in the snow. The survivors had taken cover and were reluctant to advance into the kill zone Murphy had created. More importantly, Murphy's desperate stand had bought crucial time for American reinforcements to arrive. Elements of the 3rd Infantry Division were moving up to support Company B, and German commanders realized their window of opportunity was closing. At 3:15 p.m., the German forces began withdrawing. Murphy had held off an entire battalion, 250 soldiers and 6 tanks, for over an hour, fighting alone on top of a burning vehicle. When the shooting stopped, the snow-covered field in front of his position was littered with German casualties. As soon as the Germans retreated, Murphy's leg wound, sustained from shrapnel during the fight, finally forced him off the tank destroyer. He had been hit multiple times during the battle but had continued fighting through the pain and blood loss. His company medic rushed to treat his wounds. "Jesus, Murphy," the medic said, examining the shrapnel damage. "How the hell are you still standing?" Murphy looked back at the burning tank destroyer, then at the field where so many German soldiers lay dead. "I couldn't let them through," he said simply. "My boys were counting on me." The immediate aftermath of the battle revealed the full scope of Murphy's achievement. Intelligence reports later confirmed that Murphy had single-handedly killed or wounded approximately 50 German soldiers during his 1-hour stand. The psychological impact on German forces was even greater. Entire companies had been demoralized by one teenager's refusal to retreat. Company B's casualties during the Battle of Holzwihr were remarkably light, thanks entirely to Murphy's covering fire. His actions had allowed the company to withdraw to better defensive positions and reorganize for a counterattack that would eventually drive German forces from the area. 3 months later, on June 2, 1945, Staff Sergeant Audie Murphy stood in the French town of Salzburg as Major General John W. O'Daniel pinned the Medal of Honor on his chest. The citation read, in part, "Second Lieutenant Murphy's indomitable courage and his refusal to give an inch of ground saved his company from possible encirclement and destruction and enabled it to hold the vital ground which it had been ordered to defend." But the Medal of Honor was just one of 33 military decorations Murphy would earn during his combat service. He received every U.S. military combat award for valor available from the Army, as well as 5 decorations from France and 1 from Belgium. He was, quite simply, the most decorated American soldier in history. The statistics of Murphy's military service read like fiction. 241 confirmed enemy kills, participation in 9 major campaigns across North Africa, Sicily, Italy, and France, wounded 3 times, and never once retreated from battle. But perhaps the most remarkable aspect of Audie Murphy's story is what he did after the war. Returning to civilian life in 1945, Murphy struggled with what we now recognize as post-traumatic stress disorder. He suffered from nightmares, insomnia, and what he called the 1,000-yard stare. But instead of hiding his struggles, Murphy became one of the first prominent veterans to speak openly about the psychological wounds of war. Hollywood came calling, and Murphy reluctantly agreed to star in movies about his own experiences. His 1955 film, To Hell and Back, based on his autobiography, became one of the highest-grossing films of the decade and introduced Murphy's story to a new generation of Americans. Murphy used his fame to advocate for veterans' rights and better treatment for soldiers suffering from combat trauma. He testified before Congress about the need for improved veteran services and helped countless fellow veterans navigate the bureaucracy of the VA system. On May 28, 1971, Audie Murphy died in a plane crash near Roanoke, Virginia. He was 45 years old. His funeral at Arlington National Cemetery was attended by thousands, and his grave remains one of the most visited sites in the cemetery. But Murphy's true legacy isn't found in Hollywood or even in the record books. It's found in the principle he demonstrated that cold January day at Holzwihr, that courage isn't about the absence of fear, but about doing what's right when you're terrified. At 19 years old, standing alone on a burning tank destroyer while 250 enemy soldiers tried to kill him, Audie Murphy could have retreated. He could have saved himself. Instead, he chose to save others. That choice, to stand when others fall, to fight when others flee, to protect when others run, defines not just Murphy's legacy, but the very essence of American military heroism. Today, the Audie Murphy Club, established by the U.S. Army, recognizes outstanding non-commissioned officers who demonstrate the same leadership qualities Murphy showed throughout his service. His name graces buildings, streets, and memorials across the country. But perhaps the most fitting tribute to Audie Murphy isn't made of bronze or stone. It's the countless young soldiers who, when faced with impossible odds and overwhelming fear, remember the story of a small Texas farm boy who refused to retreat. Because heroes aren't born, they're made in moments when ordinary people make extraordinary choices. And on January 26, 1945, Audie Leon Murphy made a choice that would inspire generations of Americans to come. Sometimes the smallest person in the room carries the biggest heart. Sometimes the quietest voice speaks the loudest truth. And sometimes a 19-year-old kid from Texas can stand against an entire army and remind the world what courage really looks like. That's the legacy of Audie Murphy, America's most decorated soldier, and proof that heroism comes in all sizes.